Hey guys, what's going on? It's me, Jay. Yeah, of course, you do the 11th installment of my Road to WrestleMania series. Here we'll be covering WrestleMania 11. Okay, WrestleMania 11 came to you April 2nd, 1995, from the Hartford Civic Center in Hartford, Connecticut. So basically, this one, this WrestleMania was in the backyard of the WWE. WWE's in Stanford. This was right in the capital of Connecticut, in Hartford. So at this point, Vince McMahon had just gone through the steroid distribution trial, the federal charges, and he's really downscaling the company. He doesn't really have a lot of big draws. He's in the rebuilding stage. Um, when we last left off at WrestleMania 10, he put the belt on Bret the Hitman Hart, and that was the kickoff for the new generation. And Bret Hart had an amazing year in 1994. Even me, I wasn't such a Bret Hart fan, but I I was into his his run in '94. He took on Diesel at King of the Ring '94. He took on his brother Owen in a cage match at SummerSlam 1994, and finally Bob Backlund at Survivor Series 1994. And the feud with Bob Backlund began when Backlund issued a, because as we talked about in other videos, Backlund has been back in the company since 1993, and fans are not really taking to him. Much like I predicted would happen, um, his gimmick was old in the '70s and '80s, so imagine in the '90s. When he comes back to the WWE, um, fans are really booing him. So the idea is to turn him heel. So the way they do this is he challenges Bret to a friendly exhibition match on Superstars, and it's a great match. Lots of back and forth action. They have a lot in common. They're both great technicians, great mat technicians, in ring technicians. So lots of back and forth action with this. And what does Bret do? After the match, he wins the match. He wants to shake Backlund's hand. Backlund snaps and he puts him in the cross-face chicken wing. And this move becomes Backlund's move throughout the rest of 1994. He's now Mr. Bob Backlund. He even chokes out his former manager, Arnold Scullin, blaming Arnold Scullin for the loss against the Iron Sheik back in '83, telling Arnold Scullin that he shouldn't have thrown in the towel, right? And blaming Arnold Scullin that he never got a rematch. There's an interview, Vince McMahon does an interview with Backlund, and Arnold Scullin comes out, and during this interview, Backlund puts him in the Arnold Scullin in the crossface chicken, and this was shocking because usually WWF officials, nobody ever touched them, none of the wrestlers or anything. So this was shocking to see. So obviously, uh, Backlund asked for a rematch at Survivor Series 1994. Now the stipulation of this match is it's a towel match. Because remember, that's how Backlund lost the title the first time. The first time, because they don't count his 1979 loss to Antonio Inoki. But uh, was Arnold going through in the towel. So the stipulation of this match is each man will have an individual cornerman. Uh, Bret Hart will be cornered by the British Bulldog Davey Boy Smith, who has returned. Previously in '93, he was in WCW. Now he's back in WWF because Jim the ML Neidhart returned. Bret Hart was actually the one to bring Neidhart back to the WWF because uh, he was going against Diesel at King of the Ring '94. Diesel had Shawn Michaels in his corner. So, being afraid that Shawn Michaels would interfere, Bret Hart brought his own backup in his former Hart Foundation tag team partner. Well, Anvil does help him, but Anvil, uh, just as when Diesel puts him in the jackknife powerbomb and is about to pin Bret Hart, Anvil interferes and gets Bret disqualified. Now you're wondering why would he do that? We find out later on when he helps Owen Hart defeat Razor Ramon in the King of the Ring final that he wanted Bret to stay the champion so that Owen could beat him at SummerSlam. So now it's Owen and Anvil as a team. So Bret needs backup. So SummerSlam 1994, the first SummerSlam in the United Center ever. And you got Owen and Bret in the cage. And all the Hart family is there, including the British Bulldog. And it breaks down into a melee, and the British Bulldog has to jump in. So now Bulldog is back in the WWF, and he's aligned after SummerSlam, and he's aligned with Bret Hart. So he'll be Bret Hart's cornerman going into this title match. And Backlund's cornerman will be Bret's own brother, Owen. Now, during the course of the match, Bret Hart is in the crossface chicken wing, and he's suffering and he's suffering. So Owen Hart appears like he's turned over a new leaf, and he starts begging his mom, "Please throw in the towel. Please throw in the towel." Right? And Helen, she gives in. She throws in the towel, but it was all a ruse. It was all a scheme for Owen Hart to to help Bob Backlund win the WWF Championship. And it works. Backlund is once again the WWF champion after 11 years of not having the title. But now he's Mr. Bob Backlund. He's the crazy version of Bob Backlund. When he doesn't hold on to the title, within less than a week, he is defeated by Big Daddy Cool Diesel in Madison Square Garden in a matter of seconds. Like Diesel just mows over him. Like Backlund, you would think Backlund would have a lengthy run, but he doesn't. Diesel, when 1994 closes out, Diesel is the WWF champion. Now, Diesel has undergone tremendous growth in the year of 1994. He came, of course, to the WWE in '93 as Michaels' bodyguard, and for all of '93, going into the early part of '94, he was just a a bodyguard to Shawn Michaels, nothing else. But then when Shawn Michaels retires, Michaels becomes more like a manager, like I said, and leads Diesel to become the Intercontinental champion. Diesel defeats Razor Ramon on an episode of Superstars. And he stays the champion until SummerSlam when Razor Ramon gets it back. Razor Ramon comes out with Sweetness, Walter Payton of the Chicago Bears, a Chicago legend, and wins the Intercontinental Championship for the second time. But after that, Diesel still is on a roll. He and Shawn Michaels win the the WWF Tag Team Championships right before SummerSlam. They defeat the Head Shrinkers at a house show right before SummerSlam. So they go into SummerSlam as the tag team champions, and they never lose them. But what keeps happening is Shawn Michaels keeps uh, accidentally super kicking. He wants to help Diesel, but he keeps accidentally super kicking Diesel. So at their Survivor Series match, he does the same thing, and finally Diesel snaps, and Diesel turns babyface right before he wins the WWF Championship. So now Diesel is a babyface going into 1995 and the WWF champion. So we're going into Royal Rumble 1995. There is no really odds-on favorite necessarily for this one because it could be anybody. This is a much smaller Royal Rumble than usual because they're at a loss for star power. They even bring in Dick Murdoch and other weird entries into the 1995 Royal Rumble, and most of it is centered around Pamela Anderson anyway. So because the stipulation here, and this relates to WrestleMania 11, the stipulation here is that whoever wins the Royal Rumble, Pamela Anderson will accompany them to the ring. So we're wondering who's it going to be. And number one and number two, British Bulldog and Shawn Michaels, are the last two remaining entrants. And ultimately, Shawn Michaels gets thrown over, but only one foot touches the floor. And then he skins the cat and he throws the Bulldog over, and Shawn Michaels, becomes the winner of the 1995 Royal Rumble. So Shawn Michaels, will be accompanied to the ring by Pamela Anderson, and he will take on his former friend and tag team partner, Big Daddy Cool Diesel. Now, what else happens at the Royal Rumble? The tag team championships. Now, Diesel and Shawn Michaels are the tag team champions. So they break up. They're the two dudes with attitudes. They break up. So, seeing as they are no longer the tag team champions, uh, now the tag team titles are vacant. So they put them up to a tournament. And the two finalist teams are Bam Bam Bigelow and Tatanka, and managed by Ted DiBiase. They're part of Ted DiBiase's corporation, which I'll get into in a little while because it ties into the main event. Um, Bam Bam Bigelow and Tatanka versus the 1-2-3 Kid and Bob Sparkplug Holly. Now, we didn't get into the 1-2-3 Kid last video because he was in a 10-man tag match that didn't actually occur at WrestleMania because the ladder match went overtime. So basically, he is Sean Waltman. He is the Lightning Kid. He started off in the Global Wrestling Federation, which was the organization that took the place of the AWA when the AWA closed. They occupied that time slot on ESPN. They were based out of Houston. And there he was known as the Lightning Kid. So Scott Hall, who's in WWF at this time, discovers him and they bring him in. They initially bring him in. He was trained by Boris Malenko, Dean Malenko's dad. He They bring him in initially as a jobber. So he's jobbing to everybody, jobbing to Mr. Hughes, jobbing to Doink the Clown, jobbing to all these guys. Then on an episode of Monday Night Raw in 1993, he has a match with Razor Ramon. And in this match with Razor Ramon, he beats Razor Ramon in a shocking upset. Back then, jobbers never won matches. Like most TV wrestling was like just jobber matches, and they never really won matches. So it was shocking to see. Then the next week, he beats Razor Ramon again and escapes with Razor's money. So now all the heels are making fun of Razor Ramon, and especially Ted DiBiase and IRS, and that allows Razor Ramon to turn babyface. And he has a match with Ted DiBiase. Ted DiBiase is actually last wrestling match in SummerSlam 1993. And 1-2-3 Kid has a successful 1994. He gets to the semifinals of the King of the Ring match against Owen Hart. He has an incredible match with Bret Hart in July of '94. But and even wins the tag team titles with Marty Jannetty on the 1 year anniversary of Monday Night Raw from the Quebecers. So he's kind of an upset kid. So this is kind of an upset too. Him and Bob Sparkplug Holly. Who's Bob Sparkplug Holly? Well, Bob Sparkplug Holly is another guy that comes into the WWF in the latter part of 1993. He is Bob Holly. He is originally from Alabama. He wrestled a little bit in the Memphis territory, wrestled a little bit in Smoky Mountain before being brought up as Thurman Plug in that later part of '93. He floundered a lot in 1994. He was also in that 10-man tag match that was cut from WrestleMania 10. Now, in '95, him and 1-2-3 Kid are part of this Cinderella team that's gotten to the finals of this tag team. This tag team tournament. and they're taking on these two big behemoths, Tatanka and Bam Bam Bigelow. So you would think Tatanka and Bigelow would win the match. They don't. They lose. And when they lose, Bam Bam Bigelow is a laughing stock. And who's laughing at Bam Bam Bigelow? None other than the New York Giants' own Lawrence Taylor in the audience at the show in Tampa laughing at Bam Bam Bigelow. Lawrence Taylor played golf with Lex Luger and with Big Daddy Cool Diesel. So Vince, he's desperate for a hit. He's desperate for some relevancy. WWF right now is totally irrelevant in 1995. So he desperately needs a hit. He desperately needs some relevancy, and Lawrence Taylor looks like he could do it. And they have Bam Bam Bigelow push Lawrence Taylor, and it's leading to a match between those two. So those two, Lawrence Taylor and Bam Bam Bigelow, will main event WrestleMania 11 alongside Diesel and Shawn Michaels. What are some of the other matches? The Allied Powers are going. The Allied Powers, the British Bulldog and Lex Luger. After the Bulldogs feud with the Hart Foundation, the Hart family is pretty much over. They put him with Lex Luger because Lex Luger, how the mighty have fallen in terms of Luger. He was part of the main event at WrestleMania 10, the last one we talked about, and now he is wrestling the Blue Brothers or the Harris Twins, two guys from uh, both Smoky Mountain and Memphis, coming in managed by Dutch Mantel, aka Uncle Zebekiah, in the opener. Razor Ramon is defending the is challenging for the Intercontinental Championship because at the Royal Rumble 1995, Razor Ramon lost the Intercontinental Championship to Jeff Jarrett. Jeff Jarrett now has a new manager. His manager is the Roadie, aka Brian James Armstrong. One of the Armstrong kids, the only Armstrong kid, did not really wrestle in WCW, but come to the WWF instead. And he's the roadie. He's like Double J's road manager. And he helps him win the Intercontinental Championship at the Royal Rumble 1995. But here, Razor Ramon with the 1-2-3 kid defeats Jeff Jarrett with the roadie. The Undertaker. This is a fourth entry in the Undertaker streak going against King Kong Bundy. Now you might ask yourself, well, how is King Kong Bundy back in the World Wrestling Federation? We haven't really talked about him since WrestleMania 3. Good question. Uh, he was gone from the WWF after WrestleMania 3, but again, Vince is in need of star power, and he decides to bring him back with Ted DiBiase as his manager. Ted DiBiase with an axe to grind from The Undertaker. After The Undertaker's disappearance at the Royal Rumble 1994, a lot of fans thought they would probably never see The Undertaker again, because kayfabe-wise, he was gone. So there was a bunch of Undertaker sightings here and there. They would do it all the time on Superstars on Monday Night Raw. So you guys remember at Survivor Series 1990, Ted DiBiase was the one his team was the one that initially introduced us to The Undertaker. So he comes out, he's come back to the WWF after SummerSlam 93, at the Royal Rumble 94, initially as a commentator for the Royal Rumble 94, but increasingly after that as a manager, because he's reintroduced Nikolai Volkov, because Nikolai Volkov emerges as poor and destitute and in need of money. So DiBiase bribes him. He says, "You wrestle for me and my new $1 million corporation. I will pay your bills." Likewise, he gets the services of Bam Bam Bigelow. from Luna Vachon. IRS, who was already his partner, joins him as well. So he's building this corporation, and he's saying in '94 that the Undertaker is part of his corporation. That he has found the Undertaker, and he's bringing the Undertaker back. So the Undertaker has Ted DiBiase's Undertaker has a couple of matches, and people start to notice that Ted DiBiase's Undertaker is not like the real Undertaker. Paul Bearer then comes back, and Paul Bearer, who confronted that Undertaker, concludes that that is not his Undertaker either. He says that he found the real Undertaker. So it sets the stage for SummerSlam 1994, The Undertaker versus Undertaker. Brian Lee is playing the Underfaker, and the real Undertaker, Mark Calloway, comes back with purple gloves and purple shoe bottoms with a whole new look and a bigger urn. And he defeats the Undertaker, and then he defeats and ends his feud with Yokozuna at Survivor Series in a casket rematch where he's accompanied by Chuck Norris. So moving on from there, he has a short little feud. He's continued a feud with Ted DiBiase's corporation because Ted DiBiase's corporation now they want revenge on the Undertaker, right? So first he feuds with IRS at the Royal Rumble. Then he feuds with now he's feuding with King Kong Bundy. Ted DiBiase has enlisted the services of King Kong Bundy to try to defeat the Undertaker. Of course, it doesn't work. Um, King Kong Bundy is quickly defeated by the Undertaker, but during the course of the match, it doesn't end there. Kama was returned. The former Papa Shango has now returned, steals the brand new urn, and melts it down and converts it into jewelry. Uh, okay, Owen Hart and Yokozuna. Owen Hart has been going around saying that he has a tag team partner, a mystery tag team partner. Now, there were reports in the Wrestling Observer that the mystery tag team partner was Chris Benoit, because Chris Benoit had been the Pegasus in Japan. He had been the the Pegasus Kid in Japan. He had been the wrestled in WCW Super Bowl III against Two Cold Scorpio. So he'd been known somewhat in the United States. So there were rumors that he was the one that was Owen Hart's partner. No, the rumors were unsubstantiated. It was actually Yokozuna returning, which is ingenious on Owen's part because who is the only man to ever have defeated Bret? Is Yokozuna, right? So now they're a team. The Smoking Guns, the night after Royal Rumble '95, defeated Bob Holly and 1-2-3 Kid, and they're in their first reign as WWF Tag Team Champions, but they lose at WrestleMania. So Owen Hart and Yoko are the new WWF tag Team Champions. Now Bret Hart. Bret Hart is concluding his feud with Bob Backlund, and there's going to be an I Quit match. Basically, the first person to say I quit loses. And Backlund is terrible in this match. Like Roddy Piper is the special referee. They bring Roddy Piper back as the special referee. And Bob Backlund just like you couldn't even make out what he was saying when he was trying to say I quit. This is a terrible match. Like Backlund's skit with Jonathan Taylor Thomas playing chess and quizzing him on President Eisenhower was a lot better than this I Quit match. we could have done without it. Okay, now besides the technical difficulties that Nicholas Totoro's going through in the chess with Jonathan Taylor Thomas and Bob Backlund, Jonathan Taylor Thomas is one of the biggest stars in the world right now. He's on Home Improvement, and he was just in one of the biggest cinematic hits of 1994, The Lion King. And Nick Totoro is on NYPD Blue, one of the biggest shows on television. But one is having technical difficulties, and the other in going around looking for Pamela Anderson. Because remember, she's supposed to escort the winner of the Royal Rumble, the challenger, to the ring, but nobody can find her. So finally, a conclusion is reached that Jenny Garth, who's also there, MTV's Jenny Garth. I mean, not Jenny Garth. Jenny McCarthy. Sorry, Jenny McCarthy. Jenny Garth was the year before. Jenny McCarthy will will escort Shawn Michaels to the ring, who's with Sid. Now, how does Sid get into this? Well, Vince McMahon really didn't have, even though he won the Royal Rumble, Vince McMahon didn't really have faith in Shawn Michaels. He didn't feel like he didn't feel like the fans would buy that Shawn Michaels could beat somebody as big as Diesel, right? So they're like, oh, we need to give him an insurance policy. So they vouched for Sid. Sid had some incidents in 1993 in WCW on a European tour where he stabbed Arn Anderson almost to death. So nobody really wanted to fuck with him and touch him as far as wrestling. But the Click, they're together now. They vouch for him. And on an episode of The King's Court, Michaels says that he's his new bodyguard, as an equalizer to Big Daddy Cool Diesel. So Sid is back in the WWF at this point, and it's a pretty good match. But just like you know was predicted, the fans have sympathy for Shawn Michaels, and before you know it, before the match is over, fans are actually cheering, wanting Shawn Michaels to turn babyface, and actually wanting him to win and become the WWF champion. So Diesel's reign is not really working out all that well. Um, And then the seventh match is, of course, Lawrence Taylor, who Bam Bam Bigelow has Ted DiBiase's $1 Million Corporation all out there. So LT brings out his all pro team, a bunch of football players, Ken Norton Jr., Steve McMichael, Terry Bradshaw, a bunch of them, retired and active. And LT does pretty good. Credit to Bam Bam Bigelow for being the consummate worker and performer that he was, making it look believable. Because the thought was that coming out of WrestleMania 11, Bam Bam Bigelow would be a huge baby face. He would be kind of like Diesel's second, right? He would be behind Diesel. And that was what it was supposed to be because after he loses the match, the $1 Million Corporation turn on him. DiBiase starts berating him, and he says, fuck DiBiase. And then the night after on Raw, he becomes friends on camera with Diesel. But the problem is, the second thing that happens on the Raw after WrestleMania is Shawn Michaels becomes babyface because he says that the next time he tells Sid, he says the next time I wrestle Big Daddy Cool Diesel, I want you to take the night off. And Sid's like, what do you mean to take the night off? So Sid powerbombs Shawn Michaels and breaks his back, leaving him out of commission until the King of the Ring, 1995. Where he will come back and face Kama and be a babyface because Sid will eventually leave him and join Ted DiBiase's $1 Million Corporation. So the year goes by pretty slowly because now they've added the in your house pay-per-views. Eric Bischoff is adding more pay-per-views to the WCW schedule because WCW is about to undergo major changes in 1995. So Vince McMahon is also adding more pay-per-views to the WWE schedule. And one of them is in your house, right? Where it's Diesel versus Sid twice. Diesel versus Sid one time in a regular match, and Diesel versus Sid in a lumberjack match. And they both suck. Also, they have an interesting triple header match, what they call a triple header match, which is Shawn Michaels, who wins the Intercontinental Championship for the third time in July by beating Jeff Jarrett. He's teaming with Diesel, who's the WWF champion, and they're putting the WWF and Intercontinental titles on the line against Yokozuna and Owen Hart. And Owen Hart doesn't make that match. The Bulldog does because after Lex Luger leaves to go to WCW and show up on the first Nitro in September of '95, British Bulldog turns heel and joins up with Jim Cornette's new faction, Camp Cornette. And Bulldog takes the pin. It's not considered valid, so Michaels and Diesel don't win the championship, but that's what it is. And then Bulldog and Diesel have a match, and it sucks. Um, Shawn Michaels gets beat up outside a club in Syracuse, New York. They say by multiple thugs, but really it's really by one Marine. He's forced to relinquish the the Intercontinental Championship to Shane Douglas, who was for years and years after his time in WCW, over working for Paul Heyman's new organization, based out of Philadelphia, that was started in started by Paul Heyman in 1993, and Shane Douglas was his first champion. But Vince managed to snag Shane Douglas and took all the edge away from his gimmick, making him a school teacher and a dean, and he brought him in as Dean Douglas. So now Dean Douglas has a match with Shawn Michaels at that In Your House, and Michaels gives up the Intercontinental Championship. And he's out of commission until Survivor Series. But then the night after Survivor Series 1995, in a match with a match with Owen Hart gives him the Insiguri, which is a kick to the back of the head. He collapses, and then he's out again until the Royal Rumble in 1996, which we will get into. But that's WrestleMania 11. So heading into the Royal Rumble 1996. Also at Survivor Series 1995, Diesel and Bret Hart have their third match, the third match in their trilogy, and Bret Hart regains the WWF Championship in Washington, D.C. Bret Hart regains the WWF Championship for the third time, and Diesel viciously attacks him, turning heel. So Diesel was only a babyface for a year. So we're heading into the Royal Rumble 1996 with Undertaker getting viciously attacked by Mabel and Yokozuna because Man on a Mission turned on Oscar in early part of 95. Mabel had a hell of a year. He won the King of the Ring in 1995. He challenged Diesel for the WWF Championship at SummerSlam, and he and Yokozuna basically broke the Undertaker's face in in the latter part of 95, forcing Undertaker to wear a mask. So it will be at the Royal Rumble 1996. It will be the Undertaker and Undertaker versus Bret Hart for the WWF Championship, and it will be the Royal Rumble with the odds-on favorite Shawn Michaels. In full disclosure, Shawn Michaels wins the Royal Rumble and Bret Hart retains the WWF Championship. So heading into our next edition, our next episode, WrestleMania 12, will be Shawn Michaels versus Bret the Hitman Hart in a 60-minute Iron Man match. Also, Diesel will take on The Undertaker because that match, The Undertaker and Bret Hart, Diesel cost The Undertaker that match. He interferes in the match, and he cost The Undertaker the match. So then when Diesel has his rematch with Bret Hart a month later, The Undertaker comes from underneath the ring and cost him the match. It was a cage match, allowing Bret to escape the cage and retain the title. So Diesel versus The Undertaker is set up, and Bret Hart versus Shawn Michaels is also set up for WrestleMania 12 from Anaheim, California. You had the Royal Rumble in Fresno, and you had WrestleMania 12 in Anaheim. But overall, this WrestleMania 11 was lackluster. I mean, they even had a special Olympian singing the America the Beautiful, but that was a cool part. But it was just lackluster. They tried to pile on a lot of celebrities, but once again, like WrestleMania 10, it just wasn't hitting with the celebrities. Anyway, guys, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. The next video is WrestleMania 12. 1996. We're in the year 1996 now. Please don't